So yeah, let's see. I think this is working, but wow, I might as well miss something, and this could be that. Hey guys, this is Andy from Noctie. Today we're gonna go through the weekly scenario for week 32 of 2025. So this week we have an endgame with opposite color bishops, and these endgames are notoriously known for being drawish, where one side can have multiple pawns up and still can't win. And the reason for that is that the defensive side will try to create a blockade on the squares of the same color as their bishop, and the attacking side with their opposite colored bishop won't be able to access those squares. But with that said, of course, far from all opposite colored bishops endings are drawn. However, it is a good rule of thumb that when you are defending, perhaps when you're down a pawn or two in a middle game that's about to transition into an endgame, it's often a very good idea to try to aim for opposite colored bishop ending to maximize your defensive chances. And on the flip side, if you're pressing for a win, if you're up a pawn, then perhaps you want to avoid going into opposite color bishop ending. So with that said, let's take a look at the position and analyze the ideas for both sides. So when we look at this, we should immediately note that black is up material, and we count the pawns. We see that black has 5 pawns against white's 3 pawns. So we are up 2 pawns, and more importantly, we have a pawn majority on both sides of the board. We're up a pawn on the king side and the queen side. And this is going to be essential when we create our idea and try to win this. So with that said, the general tip in opposite color bishop endings is that we want to avoid a situation where all of our pawns on the same color, and the opponent's bishop can therefore control the opposite squares. So in that sense, we really want to use our king and our bishop to move the pawn forwards together. So here for black, it's very important to utilize both pawn majorities and play for creating passed pawns on both sides of the board. So a good idea to start with is that we want to mobilize our 3 against 2 on the king side, and the result of that plan is to create 1 passed pawn on the king side, and then we also have a pawn majority on the queen side, 2 versus 1, and we want to utilize that as well, create another passed pawn. So with 2 passed pawns, white's bishop won't be able to stop both. So what will happen is that they will have to sacrifice their bishop for one of their pawns, and then we'll have 1 remaining pawn that can promote and win the game for us. On the flip side, let's discuss how white want to defend this. So now let's focus on the queen side. We see that white's pawn there is on a dark square, the same color as the bishop. So here, white is on their way of creating a dark square blockade. So we see that the bishop is controlling these dark squares, and our bishop, being a light square bishop, we can never help out in attacking those squares. So what they will try to do is they will try to use their king, perhaps to neutralize our pawn majority on the king side, and then hope to create a blockade on the queen side. But as we'll see, with correct play, we should be able to create both passed pawns and then mobilize them. But it is very important to be careful, because there are many unexpected situations in these endgames where one side has just so much more material, but in some magical way they can't make progress because the opponent side has managed to create a fortress of some kind. So a very good example of this is to look at this endgame. So what we've done here is that we simply removed all other pieces but kept the kings and black's bishop and a pawn. So when looking at this, one's immediate response is that surely black must be winning, right? We are not only up a pawn, but also a whole bishop. So we have so much material here. But the surprising thing is that this endgame is a theoretical draw and it is also very easy for white to hold. So the thing is with this position is that when we have a rook pawn, in this case we have the a pawn, then we have to look at the promotion square. And if we take a look, we see that the promotion square a1 is a dark square, but our bishop is a light squared bishop. So when this happens, this endgame is actually a draw. The only case when this is a win, if we somehow manage to get our king all the way here to stop the other king from guarding the promotion square. Only in that sense can this be a win. On the other hand, if we would have a dark squared bishop instead, then this would be an easy win for black. So what is the thing to remember from here is that when you have a rook pawn, we have to look at the promotion square and then compare that to the color of our bishop. If your bishop is of the same color as the promotion square, then the endgame is won, otherwise it's a draw. So let's take a look at how white might proceed to draw this. Well, it's very simple. White can simply march their king towards the corner. They can go in a straight line like that, or they can also just traverse using the dark squares. And that is often a common idea in these endgames, because as we said, we have a light squared bishop, so those dark squares are going to be untouchable. So in just 4 moves, white's king will be over here on a1, a dark square. And when they get the king there, they can simply shuffle back and forth between the promotion square and the neighboring square. So what will happen there is that either black will stalemate or they can't make progress. So yeah, that is the reason why this is a draw. So this is a very important position to remember and have in mind. And it's also important to remember the ideas of this position. So in real games, when we have something similar, we can compare it with this situation and see if we can draw some similarities. And one of those is that usually when we have a bishop and when we support it towards promotion, we want the color of the bishop to match the color of the promotion square. Alright, so now we know which type of position we want to avoid and which ideas to pursue. So now it's our turn to play against Noctie. Let's see if we can win this. Alright, so now we know which types of position to avoid and which to strive for. So yeah, let's play against Noctie and see if we can manage to win this. So as we discussed, our plan is to create passed pawns on both sides of the board. So first I'm going to focus on the king side since our king is closest to there. And I'm going to start out with playing g5, just mobilizing the pawn majority and try to force some exchange, and then we'll have a passed pawn. Okay, let's see here. So here I think we have some different choices. We can move up with our king or continue with the pawns. So here I think I'm going to actually play f4. So notice here that usually it's a good idea to keep your pawns on the opposite color of your own bishop, because with this you can control the light squares around it and help the pawns to advance. That is usually a good idea. On the flip side, if all of your pawns are on the same color as your own bishop, then the opponent's bishop will be able to control the surrounding squares, making it very difficult for your pawns to advance. And thus, in many cases, your opponent will create a blockade. And we don't want that. So here, I'm going to move up with our king. Let's go to f5. We're aiming for the f5 square. So now we are eyeing the g4 square. And yeah. Here, I think we can push g5 right away. Then white can take, we can take back, and then we can simply continue pushing the pawns. Or we can also go with the h-pawn first, and then prepare for the g4 pawn push. Let's see what might be best. And yeah, I think g4 is good right away. Because, yeah. Also, I think it will just result in the same thing. And here I think it's a very good idea for white to try and hold the position as it is and avoid the exchanges for as long as possible. So here we have the option of creating a passed pawn. We can take, white will take back with the pawn, they are forced to take back with the pawn, and then we'll have a passed pawn here on h4. But the issue with this is that it's going to be quite difficult for our king to infiltrate, because white here will have these two key pawns on f3 and c3 controlling these two important squares and stopping our king from infiltrating. So I think I'm going to actually keep pushing the h pawn, and yeah, with the idea to get it to h3. Let's go with that. I think that is a very strong move from white. This move stops the h pawn from going to h4. So let's see, what do? We can try and give a check with our bishop, and then white will probably go to f2. We can try and continue pushing, and then white must go to g2, because also here, when our own pawns are on the opposite color of our own bishop, what that means is that the opponent's pawns are usually going to be on the same color as our bishop, and this enables us to attack them, of course. So here white must watch out that we don't get our bishop over to f1, because then these pawns will be quite vulnerable. Okay, let's see. I think I'll go with that. So now we are deviating a bit from our initial plan, because our initial plan was to create passed pawns, but with this we also have the idea of infiltrating, getting round white's pawn structure and targeting them in that way. Okay, so what do? I think I have an idea, and it's a bit different from the initial plan, but I think we can force white into a Zugzwang, meaning that when it's their turn to move, all their moves will be bad, and ideally they would like to pass over the chance to move, but of course there's no option for that in chess, so then they'll be forced to make a move, and that will just make their position worse. So let's see here, if we push g3, then our g-pawn will control the f2 square, and our bishop here on c4 is eyeing this diagonal, so we are controlling the f1 square. And notice that white's king here on e1, it must guard the f1 square, because if the king moves away, for example to, let's say, somewhere on the d file, these two squares, and then we can simply play bishop f1, and then these two pawns on the king side will be falling. So that means that after g3, white cannot move their king, so then they'll have to shuffle with their bishop. But their bishop will be guarding this flank and this flank. So I think we'll try and achieve a position where the bishop must drop the guard on one of these sides, and then we'll utilize that and win. Let's see. Okay, so far so good. Noctie is giving us a green move, so that means that it's a good move at least. Okay, let's see, what do we do here? So notice that white's king cannot move, because yeah, the only two legal squares for the king are d1 and d2, but if the king goes to any of these two squares, then we'll jump in to bishop f1, grabbing those two pawns. So here I think we can just drop in bishop d3 just because we can, and yeah, simply we're not afraid of white disturbing us, because then we'll just jump in here and the game is over. Okay, so what do we do here? I think I'd like to keep our bishop there, and we have to work with our king. So now they are eyeing our f4 pawn, so I'm just going to go to g5, still protecting the pawn. Noctie gives a check. Now we go to g6. Let's see what Noctie does. Perhaps going back, yes. So now we are almost at the same position, and what we actually have done here is a triangulation. So a triangulation is especially important in pawn endgames, but can apply in, all types of endgames. And it's basically a concept where we move in a triangle. So we started out here and notice that if we go to c5, then we'll be back at the same position. But the difference here is that it's white to move instead of black. So we started out with the king on f5, we went to g5, to g6, and then back to f5. So we have moved 3 moves, but only gone 2 squares. So we have given away a tempo, meaning that the position will be the same, but instead of our turn to move, it's going to be the opponent's turn to move. So let's see if that helps us. White's bishop here must stay on this diagonal, because as soon as it leaves, then we'll push the a-pawn, and that'll be very dangerous. At the same time, we have some idea involving pushing the h-pawn, sacrificing it, because when white takes, then we'll try to move with our king to grab it. So here, I think I'm just going to waste the tempo by moving the bishop. Let's see. I think Noctie is going to stay on this diagonal. Yes, and here... yeah, now we have to calculate here. Do we have the sacrifice? Because we push h4, and notice that that pawn is beyond savior when we push it, because Noctie can play bishop d8, targeting it. We cannot defend it with the king, so we have to go forwards to h3. Noctie will take it, their pawn will be there. And then our idea is to use our king, go around and try to grab it. And the plan is that white's bishop must stay on this diagonal. So I think the pawn will fall. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, we go ahead, sacrifice it. Happy to see that it's a green move, so it's not a blunder at least. Let's see. And now we try and use our king. Bring it around and try to win it. Okay. Let's try and defend it. This is getting tricky. And I think... wow, could this be a fortress? Because the thing is that these two pawns are very strong. They're controlling these two entrance squares. And and our king must keep an eye on the f4 pawn, because here, let's say we move to h5, then white can just go back, harassing our f pawn, then we'll have to defend it somehow, and then we don't make progress. So let's see if we somehow can make a sacrifice. Let's say we go to h5, they go back to c7, attacking our f4 pawn. We ignore it, we go h4, they grab our pawn, we take it here, and then the idea is that the pawn will march down, and I think they'll be forced to sacrifice the bishop, and then we'll have the b pawn that will win the game for us. Because remember, even after white has sacrificed their bishop, we might be tempted to just say it's winning, but if we only had the bishop and the a-pawn, the position will be drawn, because the promotion square is a dark square, and our bishop is a light squared bishop. So yeah, let's see. I think this is working, but wow, I might as well miss something, and this could be that. But well, I don't think that's a problem. I think we can just make a tricky move of our own. And now we proceed with the plan. We take the h-pawn, they'll take our f-pawn, we move forwards. And the idea is that still we are eyeing these two squares. So notice for almost the entire game here, we are keeping white's king away. And now, we'll try to advance the g-pawn. Okay, let's see here. We have to be a bit careful, because this bishop could turn out yeah, to just hold everything together. First, I think I'm going to bring back our bishop, because we don't want them to get a tempo with their king. And now we're bringing our king to g2. We can just move the king to h1, march down the g-pawn. They must sacrifice, and then we'll win with the b-pawn. And this bishop here is stopping the f-pawn, so there shouldn't be any issue with that. And now we march down, threatening promotion. And yeah, from here, they must sacrifice. Alright, and then we came to this position. And yeah, this is just narrowly a win, because everything hangs on the b-pawn. Yeah, quite crazy actually, but sometimes it is like that. It appears to be completely winning, but in reality we are just winning by a thin margin. But yeah, enough talking. Let's just also go ahead and win this, because there's still some work to be done. Here I'm gonna mobilize the a-pawn, and then we'll use our king to yeah, to disturb the f-pawn until it pushes to f7, where we can just grab it. And then we'll remove the last threat from white. Okay, instead, white allows us to capture it with the king. And at this point, it doesn't really matter, because we have this b-pawn here that is very crucial. Right. We take the c-pawn, and we just have to be a bit careful not to get into stalemate. And here we see also white's strategy. They'll try to shuffle back and forth, and if we move in with the bishop, then we easily get a stalemate situation. So sometimes actually we want to sacrifice our bishop or a pawn to simply avoid some stalemate tricks. And I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna just go here with the bishop. Okay, they don't even take it. And yeah, what do we do? Here, I'm gonna move forwards with the b-pawn. They grab it, and now, let's see, pawn endgame. We have to be a bit careful here. Okay, I think this is the way. Notice here, b3 is no good, because then there will be stalemate. Instead, I'm gonna go a3. Always make sure that white has one square. And now we can just march the b-pawn forwards. And here we'll get a new queen. So here we saw, sometimes in these bishop-pawn endgames, it can be a good idea just to sacrifice the bishop to remove any stalemate tricks. And yeah, here we have checkmate on b4. Nice, we managed to do this. Alright, so that was this week's scenario, and as we saw, it was still quite tricky to win, even when we were 2 pawns up, one on both sides. So our initial idea with creating pass pawns on both the king side and queen side didn't really work out, because white just kept the position as it is. Instead, we had to come up with a different idea, and white was actually very close to establishing a fortress. But we had this nice sacrificing idea where we sacrificed the pawn in order to infiltrate with the king. And the beautiful thing here is that our bishop and pawn control the f1 and f2 square throughout the whole game. So yeah, that was it for this week. And hopefully you now know a bit more about opposite colored bishop endgames. And if you already know these concepts, then it never hurts to practice them one more time. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and happy playing. See you next week. Bye bye.